Good afternoon. We are delighted to welcome you to our NMC's On the Horizon series. I know many of you are battling cold weather right now, so we're asking you to bundle up and grab a warm beverage and join us for this exciting topic we're talking about today. We've had almost 500 registrants for this today, so we're really thrilled to bring the BYOD discussion to the forefront of this series. The NMC On the Horizon series reflects the research and the work of the NMC's Horizon Project in action. In the Google Hangouts On Air, international panels of experts are convened across all sectors to address this emerging technology that's posed in a discussion format and talk about its implications in teaching and learning. In today's Hangout, we have Stace Carter, instructor at the Digital Media Lab at the University of Virginia, that will moderate this live panel discussion on Bring Your Own Device, or BYOD. I'm your host today, Holly Ludgate, Senior Director of Program Development for the NMC. Amy Blake is joining us for technical support, so if you need to reach her for any questions, please let us know. So sit back, get comfortable, and enjoy the following discussion. But first, a bit of logistics for this session. If you have a question, you can type it in the Q&A area in the on-air part of the series. You can also +1 a question if you want to move it up so that the panelists will actually answer this. We will collect your questions throughout the session, and our panelists will answer them intermittently or towards the end of the session. One other thing, due to freezing pipes, Gemma Courtney will not be able to join us in our session today, but we are very excited to have the library perspective also imparted through Stace Carter. Now, on to the moderator of this webinar. Stace Carter has worked as a media producer and instructor at the University of Virginia since 2004 and currently directs production for the university's Online Office of Online Learning, specializing in course design for massively open online courses. Carter brings over a decade of experience in commercial broadcast production and the application of digital narrative, and particularly documentary storytelling in the academy. Areas of specialization are in digital storytelling and new media production development and large-scale BYOD environments. Expertise includes design for humanities, business, and interdisciplinary education. He's co-authored the multimedia case study and documentary short film Deepwater Horizon, After the Oil Spills, an exploration of the stakeholder relationships and ethical considerations leaders face in crisis. Along with this work, Stace is also an Apple Distinguished Educator and board member for the U.S. Stace, please take it away.
Thanks a lot, Holly. I could not have written that better myself. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This is going to be a really exciting discussion. We have a lot of ground to cover. So first of all, thanks to the New Media Consortium and our panelists for joining us. Again, today's topic is Bring Your Own Device. It's a rich and complex topic, whether we're talking about tablets, smartphones, laptops, other devices, or managing the larger BYOD infrastructure or strategy. This is a trend, as the NMC will tell you, is affecting everyone, and we've got a great panel to lead the discussion, again, as well as facility for having our audience join us by adding discussions in the Q&A column. We'll be keeping a close eye on that during the conversation, and so without further ado, let's go ahead and get to know our panelists really quickly. Robin, why don't you kick things off for us?
Okay. Hi, I'm Robin Dowden. I'm the Director of New Media Initiatives and the Director of Technology at the Walker Art Center. We're a contemporary art center located in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I'm going to talk a little bit about using visitors' cell phones and mobile devices for interpretation in the museum environment.
Great. Thanks a lot, Robin. Looking forward to it. Maya, tell us about yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maya Georgieva, and I'm the Associate Director at the Center for Innovation in Teaching and Learning at the Stern School of Business, New York University. My interests really include learning design, global education and policy, and emerging technology, and the corner sections between, and new global curriculum. So I'm really excited to be part of this panel today.
Fantastic. Thank you, Maya. Lisa, welcome.
Hello, I'm Lisa Gustinelli. I'm a French and Latin teacher here at St. Andrew's School in Boca Raton, Florida. We're a K-12 school, and we have just started a couple of years ago with the implementation of a one-to-one laptop program. I'm also an online teacher for Middlebury Interactive Languages. I've had experience teaching on the online platform as well as in the brick and mortar school. I'll be addressing why it's important to have BYOD in the teaching and learning environment.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Lisa, and welcome. And finally, Mr. Troy Bagwell, welcome.
Thanks, Stace. My name is Troy Bagwell. I'm the Director of Technology for Decatur Independent School District. We're northwest of Fort Worth. We are a school district of about 3,000 students, and we have about 3,500, 4,000 devices available. A lot of them are old, a lot of them are new, but we have lots of devices, and we also have a culture that's that allows for any device, really, that our students bring to the school. So that's where we're coming from in our district.
Fantastic. Thank you, Troy, and welcome. It sounds like we've got a really well-rounded panel and a lot of different perspectives. So the first thing we want to start off with, and Maya, I'm going to start you with this question. Describe for us, what exactly does BYOD look like in your environment?
Yes, thanks, Stace. Well, in some respect, BYOD as a concept has been gradually evolving for us in the last 5 years. At the Stern School of Business at New York University. We have not declared ourselves a BYOD school, but we strive and we really try to embrace a model that offers flexibility to our students, empowers our faculty, and engages our help desk and information technology department into rethinking the way we provide services and academic technology for teaching, learning, and research in this new environment. So we're on a journey, and I'm just here to offer some insights in terms of what we see BYOD making an impact in some of the areas. And of course, starting with IT services. We've been on a journey to redesigning our IT services and infrastructure to really accommodate for mobile computing demands. As mobile devices proliferate, and as also both ownership in terms of faculty and students is on the grow, so it's growing continuously. So really for us, that has meant that we beef out our network, that we have a highly available network throughout all campus spaces that actually never goes down. So that's something that certainly has been one of the first things on the table we have to really make sure we have. With that, we also have really been reviewing and upgrading our enterprise systems, our applications, so that they're compatible with mobile devices. In terms of our academic and teaching and learning applications, with BYOD comes a high priority for anytime, anywhere access to course materials for students. So it's important for us to be mobile ready, to offer these mobile friendly environments that meet our students and faculty expectations. In terms of the faculty engagement, we work to educate our faculty about the potential use, but we also focus on inspiring really innovative teaching opportunities. Really working on a small scale pilots, and I would say that's actually been one of the ways we test the waters of BYOD, encouraging small scale pilots where we really can work with small groups on our campus and see some best practices, do some research, do some assessment, gives us our opportunity to prepare our staff, and this has been a really important part for us in embracing that sort of model. With that, we really had to think about our learning spaces and as well as our public spaces, because at this point we are almost like a computer lab free school. We have opened up our computer labs to really be a spaces with easily free moving furniture that really Wi-Fi enable, with not just having power ports and projectors, but just spaces that promote conversations and ad hoc meetings. So this really goes beyond sort of the traditional classroom framework to the development of highly collaborative studio-type spaces for learning that promote workshops format, flipped classroom format. So some of these things have been really things that we've been gradually kind of like embracing in the last 5 years. And I think the biggest drive is really being meeting our student expectations. This has been one of our really single strong current that has really made us think about BYOD and trying to really respond to the student demand to seamlessly allow for integrating consumer technology into our student experiences on campus. So I think that our students and faculty have really led the way on this one.
That's fantastic, Maya. Thank you. And so I remember 10 years ago when I was at a B school, it was a very standardized environment. It sounds like the BYOD revolution has forced you to change your thinking about things way beyond devices. You're talking about the network, you're talking about the spaces, the physical spaces, and the way students and faculty collaborate. That's a really interesting extension of what's happening here. Troy, you discussed having thousands of devices and just such a wide variety of devices. To kind of continue on what Maya is talking about, what does BYOD look in your environment, especially speaking to the diversity of devices and users?
Well, we're in our 4th year. We're ending our 4th year of a one-to-one MacBook program at our high school. We're in our 2nd year of a one-to-one iPad program at our middle school. But what we have been doing over the last 4 or 5 years is developing a culture where any device is not scorned in the classroom. So you can imagine 5, 6 years ago we were having the conversations about allowing cell phones in the classroom. This was before we did one-to-one. So we are well into the culture shift of having practically any device in our classrooms. When you could walk into our middle school classrooms today and you could see, even though our students have iPads provided for them, you could see half the classroom using their smartphone or another tablet or something like that. So it's more of a culture shift to where it's more of a mobile culture that's accepting of any device. What we have found is that we've made that culture shift, but we're having to look for resources that are device agnostic.
Right.
So BYOD is great. I think what we've done with our one-to-one has been more about our staff and developing a culture that's accepting of a mobile culture. So it's still developing, but BYOD may be an inevitability for all of us. So that's kind of where we are right now.
Gotcha. And we're seeing that at the University of Virginia, where we don't really have a strategy. We are just almost by default BYOD. Lisa, you have some thoughts on this?
Yes, I liked what Troy said about the students really having so many mobile devices now. The nice thing about it, I teach middle school students, and so they're really in the loop. They're really at that age. I mean, I know the university students are demanding as well, but the middle school students, almost all of them have an iPhone or an Android. They all have the laptop. Our school, has a website. We have an LMS. They go home. They use their laptop to find out, the homework, the assignments. They have Dropboxes. They're using apps on their phones. They're using Google Docs and connecting. And for them, this is their life. I mean, they just know they go to a soccer game and they're on the sidelines of the soccer game and they're checking their homework for the night, or they're at the dentist office and they're reviewing flashcards on Quizlet. So it's pretty much in the younger age group. I can speak for it's pretty much. Troy was talking about the culture. It's pretty much a given that these students are expecting that they can access any learning that was done in the classroom, that they have a way to continue that learning outside the classroom, which is really something exciting about the BYOD.
Yeah, very much so. And I think that is, talking about how this is a part of their life, Lisa, that kind of moves us nicely into our next kind of formatted question here, which is, why did you make the move to BYOD? And Robin, we discussed offline kind of your participants, as it were, they show up with these devices, and so you're incorporating that into what you're doing there. Talk to us about how and why, Robin, that your institution made the move to BYOD.
Sure. So, I'm definitely the outlier on this panel in the sense that I'm coming from and representing the museum community. But the Walker Art Center was actually an early adopter within the museum community for looking at BYOD, although we weren't calling it at the time, devices as a way of providing interpretation to the museum visitors. So in 2004, it's almost been a decade now, we received a grant from the institution, or from the Institute of Museum and Library Services, to develop a new model for the museum audio tour that would use an IVR system and visitor cell phones as a way of providing audio interpretation, as well as just a larger body of information about the museum. For us, the move was in part about wanting to be able to provide interpretation to people that were in our sculpture garden, which is physically across the street from the Walker Art Center, and the idea that people would wanted audio interpretation about those works of art, but we're not going to cross the street to come back over to the institution to check out the device in order to engage with that. And it was also a case of, we're a relatively small institution, and our visitor services staff wasn't resourced to be able to handle checking material out and charging it, and all of the maintenance that went along with that. So we decided that it was to our best interest to put our time and money into the content development and not into managing that hardware, and knew that at that time, and again in 2004, a lot of our visitors were in fact using cell phones, and now that program has evolved really into the Walker's mobile offerings. So it's our mobile website, and still something called Art on Call that's our interpretive vehicle.
Fantastic. Thank you, Robin. So a very organic move for you guys. It just made a lot of sense, and I know I've seen that in practically every museum I've been to over the past 5 years. Along those lines, one of the questions that's just popped up and +1 by several of our audience is, how are students communicating their needs to you? And this was actually addressed specifically to Maya. So there's obviously an organic development here. People are showing up with these devices. They are ready to use them. It's a natural portal and extension to working with our students. Maya, how are you understanding or gaining an understanding of how the students need and want to use these devices?
Yes, so I mean we're very lucky because we have something that is called the Student Tech Team, which in my role, being part of the Center for Innovation, Teaching and Learning, we have we have some meetings, and they're kind of like interested in reaching out to us. So even with the first Kindle device, students came to us and said, laptop is great, but we see that we can, the Kindle can be something that we can use in our teaching, in our learning environment. And with the iPad, these, I think, demands and the potential became even, much more strongly expressed. I mean, I think this is the beauty of BYOD in terms of having a one device. It really offers the opportunity and pushes away sort of the burden to use technology or to embrace a single technology. It rather offers the opportunity to students to pick and choose between the devices that are already embedded in their life to utilize them for teaching and learning. So the focus was really in these kind of early adopters coming to us and giving us the story how they've embraced mobile technology in their lifestyle. And hearing to that, we started looking into what are the potential in our curriculum, what are the opportunity for us in faculty to engage this and go in these spaces and really leverage them. So it's really, having some, listening to some outspoken students, looking at these students who are who have already embraced this digital lifestyle, and sampling.
Sampling. Well, so yeah, speaking of that, Maya, since you're in the B-school environment, I know you are in a very data-heavy environment. And another one of the questions that we've received from our audience is, do you have any reports or summaries on the small-scale pilots that were successful at NYU? And can you share those with us, or is that something we can add in a link to the follow-up email on this Hangout?
Yeah, certainly. I think people can reach to me offline at my Twitter handle is MayaIG, and I'll be happy to share some. But what we've seen is a growing, what we saw starting for, in the last probably 4 years, growing ownership of mobile devices. We've offered some of our application, and also received a lot of interest from our students for our course. Very core system, from learning management system to registration system to university other system, to be available on a mobile. And then we also so we have, that's been on the rise. So I'm not going to quote numbers because I don't want to get it wrong, but I can tell you that gradually over the last 3 years we've seen basically an impact on that, and more students coming to campus. And we're also seeing that our students are coming between 3 and 5 different devices. So offering them that freedom to collaborate and to work on projects and engage in multimedia has been great.
Great, thank you very much, Maya. So kind of moving on to our next question, and along the lines, Maya's talking about kind of the vocal students and kind of recognizing the organic opportunities here. One of the things that we run into in every institution is, how do we manage up, how do we communicate up as our students and participants communicate to us why this is important, why this is an important move for us to make, something for us to embrace and to be a part of. And so, Lisa, I'm wondering if you could talk to us for a minute about why is this important for teaching and learning?
Thank you. Well, I've seen firsthand how important it is for teaching and learning because it really extends the borders of the classroom. I mean, with the BYOD, the students can actually take a virtual field trip without leaving the classroom walls. I happen to be in a private school, but even in the public school environment, when you think that there's such a disparity in what students can be exposed to, the idea of reaching outside the classroom, for example, I'm a Latin teacher. The students were studying ancient Egypt and mummies, and I was able to connect with the British Museum, and they were actually able to watch a live autopsy of a mummy, and that is an app. So if they have an iPad or a mobile device, they could watch that autopsy of the mummy on the app. And there's just so many ways that any teacher can extend her classroom with the mobile devices. Of course, there's also different apps such as iTunes U, which I know is huge now in the university sector. Teachers are writing books and curriculum like you wouldn't believe. We don't have to worry anymore about purchasing from 1 or 2 or 3 different publishers. I can make my own course in iTunes U, and it's specifically tailored to what my students are interested in and what they're doing, and they can access that on an iPad or an iPhone or anytime. It's anytime learning anywhere.
Excellent. Yeah, we see the same thing in our library education with our first-year students at the University of Virginia, where because everybody shows up with these devices, all we have to do is kind of pre-populate. Robin, you were talking about kind of the organic development of this in your institution. Talk to us, if you will, for a moment, kind of about the outcomes that you're seeing. So you've got really the seeds planted, you've got all these opportunities. What kind of outcomes are you seeing in terms of learning and the teaching opportunities that come with those?
Right, here I am. Sorry, it takes me a minute to make a conversion. You know, we're again using it primarily as an interpretive device, and it was interesting listening to Lisa talk about it as a way of extending the borders of the classroom. We've for a long time worked online as a way of extending the museum or the cultural activities outside of the institution's gallery space and performing arts space. But the BYOD is really bringing that interpretation, you know, that's in the digital sphere into the physical spaces in a way that enhances the visitor's engagement with that material. We see it really as being able to, you know, kind of personalize or customize your experience in a way that we can't do with analog materials. We've had a lot of, you know, good feedback statistically in terms of the material that we've created, and frankly, we've looked more to the content itself, or thought more about the content itself and its evaluation than we have necessarily the device. I mean, we, like all of you, begin with the story that we want to tell, and then it's a question of adopting the right technology to do that. We did do something this summer that, if I can figure out how to get the screen share to work here, I might show, which was using people's cell phones or mobile devices to connect. Oh, I haven't got the screen, so I'm not going to do it. To assets in the museum sculpture garden that was also video-based and used location services on the device so that we could bring the interpretive material directly to the viewer that was on the site when they intersected with that object or that place. So I'm not sure that I'm getting to the point of the evaluation, but that's a little bit more about what we're doing.
Great. No, that's fantastic. That's really helpful, actually, and I think we can probably add a link to that to the event page that archives this particular conference. And Troy, you had something you wanted to add to the teaching and learning subject.
Well, I just don't want to leave out the relevance piece of having devices. And what I mean by relevance is not necessarily when you have lesson design or anything like that and trying to create relevant experiences. I think it's more along the lines of relevance to the reality of our world that our students are in. You know, we read articles, we see articles and see news stories about, you know, 3-year-olds using iPads, da-da-da-da-da. Well, they're growing up with this stuff. I can't imagine right now a child going into a 6th grade science classroom in a completely analog, paper-only environment today. I think that students in there would say, how does this ever exist? Because I can go home and access the world. I can learn more at home than I can in this analog environment. So we can't forget whether you're doing one-to-one or BYOD, those tools are a reality in our world, and that is significant. And just like a plumber has his own tools, you know, these devices are good learning tools, and our kids are savvy enough to know that. So that's really what I wanted to say.
Right. So really what you're talking about then, Troy, is just kind of with the ubiquity of these devices, it's a BYOD world, and we're just kind of trying to make sure that we're staying current with it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
We have to have our institutions to be relevant, or we face the reality of irrelevancy. So.
Exactly. So along those lines, Troy, I'm going to keep you up on this one. That raises the question of what are the challenges of implementing and managing BYOD from the perspective of infrastructure. There's also questions of digital divide, inequity, who's got the best device. Is everybody, in terms of students, on a level playing field? And then, of course, so that's one of the big picture questions. And then the other question I want to move to is how do we work through the minutia of just how do I keep my wireless network up to snuff on that? So Troy, if you can start us off with that one, talk to us about the challenges of implementing an actual strategy for BYOD.
Well, I think one of the things that you have to be prepared for is that whole adequacy of infrastructure, adequacy of wireless network coverage, adequate bandwidth. I mean, bandwidth that nobody complains about. That's the goal right there. So But one of the interesting things about BYOD is that so many of our students that are BYOD, they have their own devices, they're using their own internet service. So it's a transition time for everybody right now. So some of them use our network, some of them don't. So, you know, wireless infrastructure is at an interesting place right now. It comes more down to things like security, what the school's responsibility is as far in the K-12 environment, the Children's Internet Protection Act, all those sorts of things, protecting our students, all those sorts of things, and whether we're doing a good job of that while they're in our environments. And you know, it's more important when they're using our own devices, but when they're using their own devices, you know, it's a different story. Their own devices, their own services, all those sorts of things. So the wireless infrastructure needs to be, you know, all over the place. Outside, somebody trying to get in. So everything needs to be outside, in the gym, in the parking lot, in the classroom, everywhere. So,
right. So it's a challenge. It's got to be there, and it's the kind of thing where people are walking. You know, if AT&T is your network, then you're, well, questionably in good shape wherever you go. Maya, at Stern, how are you guys managing the infrastructure of this, and then again, the larger picture of strategy for BYOD?
Yes, definitely. You know, strong wireless network going to all parts and places on our campus is critical in going for BYOD. And this is what I mentioned. I think that what we've been doing is a gradual approach to you know, embracing that concept, starting with beefing our network, looking at, you know, making available these core services and applications for teaching and learning on mobile in sort of mobile apps, mobile environments, looking at going to different platforms, and these are all challenges, and they don't get solved overnight. So it's definitely a process for us. But certainly having a strong network in all your classroom and spaces, so that students can really, you know, embrace this model seamlessly, and it becomes less about the technology, and it's not about a choice of technology, but it's a lot more about learning, and it's kind of using it purposefully, not saying, you know, you use this device in the classroom, which oftentimes is what early on we have done, right? We all gone into initiatives where we've embraced laptops, or we've embraced other devices, and now we have sort of this new world where you know, you can actually produce the video on your iPhone or any other mobile smartphone. That you can leverage that in the classroom. You can you know, do problem solving. You can do simulation. So yeah, it's starting with network infrastructure and looking at your application is first, and engaging your users, engaging your audience. For these programs to really you know, flourish, it's really kind of being in conversation with the students and faculty, and even becoming an advocate for some of these applications and projects.
Well, that's I couldn't agree more, Maya. And I think what you're raising here is kind of the classic CIO versus CTO question of, you know, the brilliant ideas about what we can do with technology, and then the realities of how our networks can support it and limited IT infrastructure. We had a question actually come up that's been +1 many times from Don, who asks, and I'm going to throw this out to the entire panel. Wouldn't it make better sense to limit operating system choices and coach users to adapt to the services that can be sustained? So does it make sense for us to prescribe exactly what's happening on the device, which is almost kind of, let's dial back the scope of BYOD, almost say, okay, bring your own device, but we want to tell you exactly what device to bring? Don, I don't mean to rewrite your question, but can anybody speak to that? Did you have thoughts on, should we be prescribing a bit more about how devices should be working in a BYOD environment, or is that going to be a gating, limiting factor? And then let's take that to the question of, how do we address inequity in what students show up with? How do we work with that? Who wants to dive in on that? Maya, do you want to take that question?
Well, my own experience and background is in teaching and learning. So I definitely, acknowledge that in terms of security and in terms of infrastructure, BYOD, poses a lot of challenges to small and mid-ware information technology departments and groups on our campuses and in our schools. But I think that we live in a different world, and it isn't to say that rolling a single device is wrong, but it simply presents another options for schools to consider, and it's really to consider and get ready for it, and move on that path. So I think that certainly the question about digital divide, and as we embrace these type of models, we have to make sure that we have opportunities for students who don't have these devices to participate in loaner pools or be able to get access to them. And it's great to have those because it's also another way to give opportunities for faculty and students to try technology before they buy it. So I think that's where I'll go with this.
Excellent. Well, and I know Lisa has some strong feelings on this, especially as concerns connecting the technology to the pedagogy and make sure you've got your priorities straight when you're doing that. So, Lisa, talk to us about that.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the fact that with the emergence of so much new technology, of course, there are a lot of different programs, educational programs that have been come out and are very enticing to teachers. It almost gets a little bit overwhelming for teachers to see all the different materials available to them, and also to not get wrapped up in the fact that, okay, this is a new technology, let me try this and just once or just for fun in the classroom. They really need, teachers I believe really need like an educational consultant and an educational technologist to guide them in what works best in their subject area and in their classroom. I mean, certain apps are going to work better for the art teacher or for the history teacher. Maybe, I know we have a teacher at our school using NPR. The kids come in with their phones and they check out the news and they compare the morning news to the news in the afternoon. So we have to be careful not to get so wrapped up in the gadget itself that, I as more of a classroom teacher than as a technologist, am more important in the fact that we have to use it in a way that, it, as Troy said, that it's relevant for students and that they're really gaining insight and experience through the use of the device rather than just having fun with it. And I also wanted to say one little thing also about the controlling what they're able to see. I'm in a different situation because, of course, I'm in a middle school situation. So, of course, we don't want the students to have access to everything that is there. So it has to be controlled in a way that what they're using is, again, used in a relevant way. And back to what Maya said at the beginning when she was first starting to talk, the physicality of the classroom is really important. The old-fashioned classroom where the teacher is sitting at the front of the room and the students are sitting at desks just doesn't work. There shouldn't even be a desk at the front of the room. The students should be in collaborative groups where the teacher can circulate and actually see what's going on those mobile devices so that we can kind of control what's going on.
Right, so that puts the onus on us as educators to continue to be engaging and to keep our students involved, right? That makes a lot of sense, Lisa. So pedagogy first, as always. One of the things that has come up is a question about along the lines of infrastructure. So we want to keep our students engaged. We want to be good teachers. We don't want to necessarily have to be IT geniuses to keep these things going. And we want to focus on what we're good at as educators, which is educating. So one of the questions I have for you is, how do you offload the responsibilities of IT support? And this is one of the questions that came up from our audience is, does anyone have experience working with third-party or cloud-based providers to get them to support student patron devices. And Troy, do you have some thoughts on that? Does anybody on the panel have thoughts or some good references for offloading some of that work?
Well, I'll just say from my personal point of view and having a small department and lots of devices, I'm happy when anything is cloud-based because that means I don't have to support a server and all that sort of stuff and loading OSs and network operating systems. So I like the cloud-based stuff. You know, it's one of those things where there seems to be there was at one time you had Microsoft, you had Apple, and you had the internet as these three big technical areas, these three big domains. And since this mobile revolution, you know, it seems to have fractured into tinier pieces. And so that's really hard, especially on the device side. So what I would like to see, and what we look for constantly, is what are the resources that are device agnostic? Because there's just so much, and it's not just the content. It's things like, you know, is the content housed somewhere, and can I get it from any device that I want from anywhere? And it is so important that the teacher in the classroom using those resources, the student in the classroom using those resources have no problems getting to it, whatever they're using, and then wherever they are. That's another big issue. So, you know, device agnostic, platform agnostic, man, that's got to be a part of it.
Yeah, right. And Maya, how about you guys? Do you have any kind of cloud solutions that are working with Stern, or that Stern has discovered that are kind of helping you offload the IT side of things so that you can really focus on the pedagogy?
Yeah, I think that our information technology department has done some small scale and some conversation in as well as the university in more about that infrastructure, but I am really not the right person to speak about that, so I'll just kind of take it back. I would say that what we've done is applications for course materials. Again, is something that we've worked with third party in the publishing industry, in different startup and sort of startup area, in the startup sort of even phase, with companies that have applications that we find, paired with some pedagogy, can really bring impact on the teaching and learning environment at Stern.
Great, thank you, Maya. So let's continue. We're starting to run low on time. We have a few more questions and lots of questions from the audience. But one of the interesting kind of strategy questions that has come up is from Ken, who says his program has been one-to-one since 2003. Obviously, kind of you're either one-to-one or you're BYOD, but in this world, as we've discussed, you're one or the other, right? He says they've been doing this since 2003, where they provide a laptop and a tablet to students. And one question that they have, and I experienced this when I worked at the Darden School of Business, was what would cause a one-to-one program like theirs to switch to BYOD? They're constantly monitoring this. Lisa, you are in kind of a mixed environment right now. What kind of leverage or levers are you seeing that might make you think in a strategic way about moving away from having a more prescribed device base to just going straight up BYOD?
Well, honestly, I'd have to say I wouldn't foresee that happening. I mean, I know that's his question, but honestly, I see it as more of an environment where you have everything, where you have the one-to-one, because as I know, as I've experienced as a teacher, there are certain things that you cannot get on an iPad or an iPhone or on the BYOD that you can get on the Mac. So I think that I would offer up a hybrid solution where students have both, so they have the best of both worlds. They have the one-to-one, but at the same time, they have the BYOD.
Gotcha, great, excellent. So, and I think that speaks to, again, kind of what we've been discussing. One of the themes is kind of the organic nature of BYOD. It seems like whether you prescribe a one-to-one program or not, people are still going to show up with their smartphones, right? And they will probably be using those. And so that's something that just to be always on the lookout. But thank you for the question, Ken. That was a really good one. And we'll continue to monitor that. next thing we want to talk about as we're kind of getting to the close of our panel here is what opportunities lie in the future for BYOD. Kind of what do we see the future of it as looking like, and how can we kind of embrace that and get ready for it. So Maya, I'm going to put you on the spot on this one. We'll just ask the question, what are the opportunities of BYOD in the future at Stern and just in education in general?
I mean, I think that really to respond to succeed at BYOD, organization must build in flexibility to respond quickly to these as new technologies become available. I mean, the future of BYOD may be something like what Stephen DiFilippo, a CEO of Cecil College, actually, and Adam Dahlstrom explained from eCard. They explain bring your own everything, where actually students will bring not only their own devices, but they bring their apps, they'll bring their services, and this is maybe the world we live in tomorrow. So I think that this is just how are we going to be able to offer students this opportunities to bring their environment into our organizations. So I think to embrace this, we will indeed need to become learning organizations in the full sense of this term. And of course, I think that something we should mention as sort of where this is going, just around, just as this week in Las Vegas, we are having the wearable, the Consumer Electronics show, where a lot of wearable technology is making a splash. So, next thing we'll have devices that will be in our ears, that it will be on our wrists, that will be embedded in our eyeglasses. So we already know we have Google Glass, we have other devices that project information just in front of our eyes. Meta is a company that does this in a very immersive 3D experiences. So I think that in the future, BYOD may be absolutely invisible. So imagine the implication on this for our companies when you're talking to somebody and you don't even know that they have access or to information in device on their own. So I think that this is really, the future. And of course, yes, thinking about participating in this panel, I thought wouldn't it be cool to do this on Google Glass? But I did think that it would be much more cool if all the participants are on a Google Glass. So perhaps NMC will run a similar panel on Glass sometime later this year. I may have just volunteered for something, but I do think that the future is in understanding that students will, before they come, and especially in the higher ed environment, before they come to college, they would have immersed themselves and access to a number of different technologies, a number of different services. They would already have created content and familiar with creating this content. So it's going to be how they are able to present and engage this. And at the same time, there's nothing wrong to have no technology in the classroom if students and faculties are engaged. So I think BYOD is really embracing flexibility. It's really thinking about allowing students to take ownership of what it is. And we know that when students take responsibility and they participate, that promotes a student-centered learning experience, and these are the most meaningful experiences that we can offer our students.
That's I'm glad you went there, Maya. And so Holly and Alex, please do note Maya's request that we do these on Google Glasses next time. And Maya, one of the things that you segued into there is how do we keep students engaged, right? It seems that one of the running themes here is that the pedagogy, the content, what's the goals of the classroom, the learning outcomes, can never come second to the technology, and I think that's a given. It seems, again, one of the themes is people are showing up with these devices. That's why BYOD is such a predominant theme, and so it is, again, as we discussed a few minutes ago, the onus upon us as educators to keep our students engaged. These devices are simply a tool to help help us teach, help them learn. Troy, I want to go back to you really quickly on the question of the future. Opportunities for BYOD in the future, how you see this developing in your institution and kind of in the larger world. But Mr. Bagwell, what do you think this is going to look like in the future, or where is this whole thing going?
Well, one of the things that my staff and I talk about is that we realize that we're going to have to give up a lot of control that we've had in the past. Maybe our department becomes more of an internet service provider going into the future, and you're talking 5-10 years out. And so there's a lot of changes that are happening in how we approach things. But on the teaching and learning side, that freedom and ownership piece, like Maya was saying, is such an important piece. I think that being able, I think we've done a successful job of creating lifelong learners. Our kids will learn anything they want to, and that's the key thing. What do they want to learn? And it's not necessarily that they don't have to learn what we need them to learn. How do we make them want to learn it? And that's more important than it ever has been in our history. So really it's technology's fault that we do that. So.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, it's technology's fault. So one last question. This is a big one, and I haven't set anybody up for this one, so I want you guys to dive in. But one of the big questions that we're getting from Dirk, and it's been +1 several times, is the question of digital divide. We've touched on this a little bit. Maya, you've answered us with some strategies that you've had for device checkout, etc. But this is a very real thing. Some people are going to be showing up with the latest iPhones. Some people are showing up with flip phones, right? And I've run into this in my digital storytelling classes at UVA, where every now and then I say, oh, come on, really, who hasn't taken a picture on their phone? And inevitably there's going to be a student that hasn't. And so please just jump in on this, but how do we deal with that? Troy, you're in a very large institution. Robin, you've got just people coming through the door that you've got content set up for, and Lisa, you've got kind of more of a prescribed environment. But for each of you, how do we deal with these things? And not just in a how do we just kind of keep it from being our problem, but how do we help students that are not up to date with their peers in terms of device ownership?
I just want to say something real quick, and I'll let Robin and Lisa go. When we did one-to-one, I wasn't really interested in considering one-to-one unless we were there to solve the inequity and the digital divide issue. Really, I don't see the point in doing any of that. We're approaching in our district a 50% low socioeconomic rate. So that's a different population. We're trying to bridge that gap, and we think about information poor. I think we should think about that sort of poverty, and that our kids that are information poor are at a disadvantage, and we've got to address that. And that's one of our goals in our district, to address that. So.
Great, excellent. So it's good to have it as a goal. I mean, the first thing you've got to do is recognize it as an issue, put it on the table, and then you can start dealing with it, right? Robin, you're in a very different type of environment, but so you've got great content, you've got great material, but you have no idea what people are going to be showing up at the museum with. How do you address that in the museum environment?
We did try for a while to make personal devices, iPods, smartphones, actually available for checkout, but in many ways, we were rubbing against the exact reason that we introduced BYOD to begin with, which was to get out of the business of having to monitor those devices. So I think our approach really is to provide a smorgasbord or a buffet of offerings around the work that we present, so that it isn't that the people that don't have access to digital resources, they in fact will still have labels, they'll still have tour guides who may in fact take advantage of some digital resources, but it's just we do it that way.
Yeah.
The other thing that we do, and this gets back to the platform agnostic, we have not developed apps. I mean, we're definitely committed to kind of tuning web pages and making that the way that we offer up these materials. So we called the garden app that I was going to show a web app because it wasn't an iPhone app or anything like that, and it allowed us to really take advantage of the services that were on the devices that people were bringing, and really starting to get some of that interaction that feels more like a native app, but we can actually do with a well-tuned web page, and making that our commitment.
Yeah, and I think we can all relate to that. It's one thing to build an app. It's another thing to make content as accessible as humanly possible. Scott in our comments indicates the Indianapolis Museum of Arts found that in December, over 50% of its website users are now coming from tablets and phones, and I would venture a guess that several of those users are visiting the museum website from the museum itself. So that's no doubt an important thing. I think that we are kind of getting close on time here. We have one last question that I want to put out to you all, and that is something regarding how to prepare for a BYOD environment. If each one of you could take just a minute and talk to us about, give me one quick physical step. Do I need charging stations? Do I need to talk to my IT staff? But what is the first thing, or the most important thing, or an essential thing that you need to do to prepare your institution and set it up so that your users have a successful BYOD experience? And why don't we start with you, Robin, since it looks like your mic is still on?
Sure. Here's one failing that I would say we've had in our environment, which again is probably different than what you're encountering in the education environments you're talking about, and that's making people aware of the material that's out there on their own devices. So, you walk into a gallery or you walk out into the Minneapolis Sculpture Garden, how do I make you aware of the opportunities that are there that you could take advantage of? And so my advice would be figure out those marketing angles and those communication pieces that allow people to understand what's available to them.
Excellent, thank you. And I'm just going to kind of move from left to right on the bottom of my screen here. Lisa, if you had to do one thing to prepare, or if somebody said, I'm going BYOD, what do I need to do to set up for this? What's the piece of advice you give?
Okay, well, the first thing I would do would be to, like I said, change the physical environment in which the students are working. I would also be sure that they had if they're spending a day at school or something like that in the K-12 environment, that they would have a safe place if it's their own device, because I know a lot of you are in the university sector, but I can tell you that in the K-12 sector, that's also a concern, the loss of the device. So a system to be sure that they know, where it is and where to keep it, believe it or not, when they're not using it. Is very important. I also wanted to say, just really quickly, back about the digital divide, that I believe I've seen firsthand, and I believe that our society is going to adapt to this. I do a lot of work in developing nations, specifically Madagascar, with technology. I work with people, they are students who are living in abject poverty, yet they are able to somehow afford to get a device, a mobile device. And the cell phone company there actually provides Facebook at no charge on that device. That's all they get on it. They get Facebook. And that's a developing nation. So the way I look at it is, if a little tiny country with no money like Madagascar is adapting to allow everybody to have access to their own device, I imagine that with everything that's going on here with digital promise, that in our country, we won't have to worry about that digital divide. I honestly think that there will be programs and availability for all students.
I couldn't agree more, Lisa. I see with the massive online courses that we do at the University of Virginia, our users are all over the world, and it is shocking to me how many users are in emerging markets in nearly third world countries, but are finding access to these resources through their mobile devices and getting internet at coffee shops or through cell providers. So it's definitely less of a thing, definitely a thing that needs to be kept on the table without a doubt. And of course, I think that was a great piece of advice. Turn on Find My iPhone, because these things are easy to lose, especially if you've got a bunch of teenagers running around with them. Maya, let's go to you with a closing comment. What's the one piece of advice you'd give to somebody that is moving to this?
Yes, so perhaps I will offer two. For the IT folks out there, definitely beef up the wireless and the Wi-Fi on campus. But for really in a much more sort of holistic way, it's really test the waters with small pilots. Work with the faculty, work with a group of students, and observe that. Research that, play with with different ideas. I think that's the best way to see, are you ready? Are your students embracing it? Are your faculty embracing it? Is your IT staff able to be agile and now start in supporting this new world of many different devices and platforms? And so I still think it's an exciting time we find ourselves, because it's not about the technology. It's really about the students taking this ownership and creating amazing things and projects with what's available and at their fingertips. And with that, this conversation really today reminded me about a quote from John Dewey. So if we teach today, as we taught yesterday, we rob our children of tomorrow. So I think it's just giving the opportunity for participation and embracing that it's the thrilling moment of this.
That's beautiful. Thank you very much, Maya. That was really, really great. And Troy, we haven't gone to you yet. The one piece of advice that you would give to somebody that is moving to BYOD?
Well, I think a school needs a clear instructional vision. And they need to have a very clear idea of what they want learning to look like. And I say that in my sense, in my position as technology director, in that holds me accountable for providing really good services, whether they're wireless, all those sorts of things. And it also holds the administrators responsible for their success. It holds teachers responsible. It holds students responsible for their own learning. That you have that clear instructional vision. If you don't have that in place before you go down one of these roads, then you're setting yourself up to a technology-centered program, and it won't be reaching your institution's vision. So that's my advice.
That's great. Fantastic. Thank you very, very much. Everybody, we have a few more minutes here, so instead of just hanging up on this whole thing, we have a few more questions in our Q&A column. And let's see, the first one is actually, we have a comment about from Stephanie that says UNESCO has some great reports on mobile technology around the world. I would encourage everyone to look at that. There's also, of course, the UN that works with them, and a few other nonprofit foundations. So on the event page, we will try and post some links to those. And Stephanie, if you have any links to those, please feel free to post those. And here's a really interesting kind of continuing closing question from Bronwyn. How much is BYO tools part of a real pedagogical paradigm shift for educational organizations? For instance, I'm sight reading this, the Shigeru Mitra concept of SOL, self-organized learning environments. So how much of this is, in kind of one more closing question, how much of this is a real pedagogical paradigm shift, and how much of it is just students showing up with their phones? Maya, it looks like you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is. It's really shifting, and I think it's shifting the role even of the faculty as not just being sort of the the person at the front of the room, but just taking on the role of facilitator, and the students leading the way in terms of sharing, what they're sharing and participating in this personalized learning experiences. So I think that I think definitely there's an element of that. There is an element in self-directed learners where students are able to go on their own and actually learn things and master sort of applications and being able to to engage in projects beyond what we probably would have engaged in teaching them in a classroom or in a computer lab, because they come and they've already have experience with that. It's not for the sake of technology. It's really for the sake of what they're interested in doing. So definitely shifting roles in that capacity of just the environment and the roles between students and faculty and technology.
One of the things that I love about Sugata Mitra's The Soul idea is it's in the question. It's all about the question, and we talk to our teachers all the time. How do we design questions that Google can't answer? And I think that's one of the things that we're all faced with in the learning, in today's learning, is Google can answer so many things. What are the things that Google can't answer? And that's where real learning happens. So I love Sugata Mitra's The Whole Soul. I'm trying to get teachers to do that if I could.
Excellent, excellent. It was a great resource, a great question. And that brings us to the end of our panel, guys. I can't believe how quickly this time has gone, but thank you so much to all of you for joining us. Really interesting perspectives, really valuable perspectives. And so thank you again. Thank you to our audience for the great questions that you put to us. And Holly, we're going to go ahead and hand it back to you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks. So to wrap up today's webinar, I guess we need to purchase some Google Glass for everyone. But I want to take time to thank our moderators, Stace, and the panelists, Troy, Robin, Maya, and Lisa, on behalf of the NMC for taking time to present their BYOD perspective. So participants, if you want more information or anything you saw or heard today, just let us know. You can contact me directly at holly@thenmc.org. But you can also learn more about the future of the NMC and the Horizon programs and get involved in our community. You can visit our website at nmc.org. You can like us on Facebook. You can friend us on Twitter. We're pretty much all over the social media sphere. So please save the date for Wednesday, February 5th at noon Central for our next NMC on the Horizon event that's focused on social networks. Until then, have a great week.